Awesome. Well, it is recording.
Okay, very
All right,
cool.
awesome. Cool. Well, if you're ready, we can get into it.
I'm ready.
Awesome. Cool. So, you want to pick up with that conversation we were having last week about movies? I didn't know how much of a film guy you were.
Uh, I'm a pretty big film guy.
That's awesome.
I actually just left in the middle of a movie right now to come to this.
Oh,
So
really? Thanks. Thanks for doing that. Cool.
I,
What movie were you seeing?
I was watching a 1945 movie called, or 1949 British movie called Obsession,
Okay,
directed
cool.
by Dimitri, if you know
Cool.
who that is. Edward
I don't
Dimitri.
think I've heard of that before, but I'll check it out.
Um, I think he started like in the, let me think, maybe the 20s. Or
Cool.
no, the 30s. I think he may have started recording in the 30s.
Is he
Anyway,
American?
he was, well, he did a lot of stuff in both Britain and America.
Okay,
So I think
cool.
he was directors that started over there and ended up over here.
Awesome, nice. And you're explaining to me that you set up something that you can stream just whatever movie that's out there.
Not
Can you explain
whatever,
that a bit? That's awesome.
not whatever. You have to have the files yourself.
Oh, okay, cool, cool.
But it's the software is called Plex, Plex.
Flex. Okay,
So I built a 54 terabyte server.
cool.
It's basically the Plex is basically the server software, and the hard drive enclosure with the 55 terabytes. That's just basically storage, and Plex basically manages all of it and then streams that
That's awesome.
to whatever device. In my case, my TV.
Cool. You didn't come up with that software, did you?
Oh God, no.
That's right. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Cool. Yeah. This week was finals week for me, but I did actually watch Blue Velvet because you
Oh,
suggested
yeah.
that. That was an awesome movie.
You've never seen it before.
I had never seen it before. No.
Well, that's necessary viewing in my book.
Yes, totally. Yeah, it was a great film. Yeah. Anything with Dennis Hopper is, I love it.
Yeah.
Such a scary actor.
I still plan to make you a list. It's just it's going to be an undertaking.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Thank you. No worries. Yeah, that's sick. And then you were saying, what were some other of your favorite movies? You'd mentioned Brazil and Blow Up.
Um, well, let's see. I'm just going to go. So on Plex, you can actually create collections, basically.
Oh, okay, cool.
So for instance, I have a collection of camp movies. I have a collection of film noir movies. I have a
Nice.
collection of classic horror, another one of Japanese monsters, another one of Hitchcock, another one that's just music documentaries.
Cool.
And then I've got one that's just a collection of all-time favorites, just personal ones. A lot of which are on the top 1,000 list, but
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, there are a ton. But let's say I'll mention some movies to you,
Yeah.
just because let's see, Bringing Up Baby. I'll start with older stuff.
All
My
right.
Man Godfrey. These are movies in like the 30s, right?
30s. Yeah, we saw
Uh,
Bringing Up Baby in class, I think.
oh, cool. The Philadelphia Story, The Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, Laura, Sunset Boulevard, um, Night of the Hunter. One of my favorite kind of spooky ghost stories is not many people know about. It's called The Innocents, as in the plural of innocent, from
I don't think I've heard of
1961.
that one. Cool. You said it was 1960?
It's 1961. It's an
Oh, okay.
adaptation of Miller's Turn of the Screw. It's a very slow, moody movie, but it's a slow build.
Cool.
If you've never seen Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, you have to see that.
All right. I think my dad's mentioned that, but I don't think I've seen that before, actually.
Blow Up is an old favorite. Little Big Man, I think I may have mentioned.
Yeah, you'd mentioned that one. I wrote that down.
Walkabouts. If you've never seen A Clockwork Orange, you probably
Oh, I
should.
love that movie. That's actually where I got the name of my band, Hallucinogenic Milk, because I didn't want to rip
Okay,
off the Drencrom, so I just took that from the movie.
from Milk Veg for the Milk Bar.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Paper Moon is another one. I think we talked about Chinatown.
Hmm.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, I love that one.
Taxi Driver. Dirso Usala.
Is that a foreign film too?
It is Japanese and Russian
Well, that's
together.
crazy. That's cool.
Deer Hunter, Animal House.
Nice.
Being There, which is a I think maybe one of the last great Hal Ashby films.
Mhm.
Raging Bull, if you've never seen that, from Scorsese. The list just goes on and on.
Cool. Awesome.
Man, Blade Runner is one of my favorite.
Oh, that's one of my favorites too. I love that movie.
So it's a long list.
Awesome. Cool.
I was going to try to make you a list of like 200 films.
Oh, that would be great. I love that. I'd spend my whole summer watching.
Watch all of these.
For sure. That'll be so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So are you more of a fan of movies before the 2000s?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I have movies that go back to the teens, and I have
Oh,
movies
cool.
that are as recent as I think this year or last year.
Oh, okay.
I have a lot. I have like close to 1,700 movies, and yet by the same token, I consider myself very picky.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Yeah, for sure.
Because you have movies in a library there, you have to consider them as movies that you would theoretically watch again and again.
Yeah, totally. Cool. What are your most favorite recent movies then in the past like 5 or 10 years?
Oh God. Maybe I have things open. I'm trying to look up movies.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And it's using up bandwidth. So I'll just give you a few movies that I think, maybe not the last 5 or 10, but Under the Skin is one that I think is amazing.
Okay.
Holy Motors is another one I would suggest looking up.
Cool.
I totally dig all the Dark Knight.
Oh yeah, those ones with Christian Bale.
You've never seen the Royal Tenenbaums. That's actually 20 years old now. I can't.
Oh wow.
That, I think that's I think that's one of Fletchen's best.
Okay, cool.
I've been watching movies since I was a kid because both of my parents used to bring me to.
Oh, that's cool. So that's how you got into liking a bunch of film, or did somebody else kind of get you into it, maybe in like college or something?
Probably just started with my parents.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. While we're on that subject, what was your early life like?
My early life was pretty chaotic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my parents split when I was very young, maybe around a year old, I think. And so it was just me and my mom for a long time. And then it was just the two of us. And then when I was about 7 years old, my mom started using heroin.
Oh, geez.
And she got pretty strung out. And I actually dropped out of school when I was 7 in second grade.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was 8, I finally moved in with my father, who was very embedded in the late 60s San Francisco hippie activist scene.
Oh, yeah.
And he was an alcoholic, pretty severe. But life was a lot more functional with him than it was with a mom up all the time. But my father moved a lot. We lived together, or I lived with him, I guess I should say, till I was about 15. During those 7 years, we lived in 6 different places all over the West Coast, starting in San Francisco and ending up in this little island called Guaymas, which is at the southern end of the San Juan Islands, just off a city called Anacortes.
Oh, okay. Not Anacortes, Washington. You're in California. Oh, okay, cool.
So if you look at Anacortes, you look just due north. There's a little tiny island called Guaymas.
Oh, okay, cool.
I ended up there, and then he was moving again back to the Bay Area, and I was so pissed off at him that I said, "Well, I'm going to move back with my mom." And at that point, I was 15, and I lived under my mom's roof, and she wasn't on heroin anymore, but she was.
That's good.
Kind of a mess from she was pretty much on methadone, which messes yet pretty bad, arguably even worse than heroin, frankly.
Oh, really?
And so at that point, I was pretty much just living an independent life,
Yeah.
But between the ages of 7 and 12, I didn't attend any regular public school or anything.
Oh, wow.
And I also had no TV during those years. So I was surrounded by a lot of books, and I was surrounded just by kind of a semi-communal hippie kind of.
Yeah. Did you work at a job?
My first real job, I guess I was 12 or 13.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was a real job, but I was working, and I had summer jobs working in the fields, picking strawberries, or what's called roguing spinach, and that's where you pull out the male plants and you tear them in half and you throw them on the ground because you don't want to pollinate the female
Oh,
plant.
geez. Yeah, that sounds like hard work.
It was actually pretty backbreaking, even
Wow.
for a 12 or 13-year-old.
Yeah, that sucks.
But I ended up back down in Berkeley, where I'm originally from,
Oh, okay, cool.
and I graduated Berkeley High, and there's a lot of crazy stories from all those years. I mean,
Yeah.
abnormal enough to drop out of school, but the hardest thing about that was actually when I came back to the school environment. I couldn't really relate to other people my own age very well, because I was
Yeah.
mostly socialized around adults. So I was very comfortable talking with adults, but not with other 12 and 13-year-olds. So,
Yeah. Were you an only child too?
yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So am I. So I've always been more comfortable talking to adults than kids too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got my first ear piercing when I was 9, and I
Wow.
got my first tattoo when I was 10.
Oh, no way. What was your tattoo?
It's a Leo sign on the top of my left hand.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Like, to the absolute horror of my grandparents.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Did you give it to yourself?
No, it was given to me, but prison style. It was actually given to me by one of the only 2 people to have ever successfully escaped from San Quentin Penitentiary.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. How'd you meet up with them?
He was living underground with a group of us, and I have no idea how that came to be.
That's crazy.
I never even knew his real name. I knew him as Dave, but
Dave. Yeah.
I knew that was not his real name.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, weird fucking childhood,
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah, for
But
sure.
it's
So
the only one I know. So
yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. So when did you start getting into music and how did you get into it?
I think I was into music at a very young age.
Cool.
Probably really like starting around 6 years old. My mom had
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of records and played them all the time. And that was just something I was always fixated on,
Yeah.
Certain early artists were like the Beatles and Bob Dylan and the band.
Cool.
She also listened to various jazz that I grew up appreciating. So, Miles Davis, Horace Silver, Dave Brubeck.
Cool.
So I had a real deep and intense appreciation
That's awesome.
of music pretty early on. And then when my mom started getting strung out on dope,
Hmm.
that the records became almost more of a refuge because it was a place that
Yeah.
I could go to.
Yeah.
And then my father, there was records there too, but it was not as core to his whole,
Hmm.
there was always records around. Like when
Yeah.
you grew up in hippie and communal environments, it was just part of
Yeah.
it. But it just became something that kind of was woven into sort of who I was, and
Cool.
just has always been that way. And in high school was when I started really collecting records. And,
Awesome.
living under my mom's roof, but I basically went to high school.
Hmm.
I had an after-school job at the University of California, Berkeley bookstore.
Cool.
And then after that, I would just hit the record stores after work and then go home and basically just smoke pot, listen to
Yeah.
records, do homework, and then get up. And it was
Yeah.
during that time when I just realized that my obsession for music
Yeah.
was to such a degree that I really wanted to make music, not just listen. And part of that too is because even starting at a pretty young age as a kid,
Hmm.
I've always heard music in my head.
That's
And
cool.
I still do.
Yeah.
And it's very often fully arranged. And it's
That's
not
awesome.
music I've ever heard before. So, for instance, with a lot of skin yard stuff, a lot of the skin yard stuff we wrote coming out of jams. We would jam typically at the beginning of every rehearsal, just because in part that's where we generated a lot of ideas, but also it's a great way to learn how to listen to each other, and it's a good way to kind of begin to mesh with each other and sort of develop a shared vocabulary.
That's awesome.
I would often hear music in my head, and I would sort of translate that to bass, and some of those songs came from there. Like, I don't know where they came from. They were just in my head,
Yeah.
to bring it to the fretboard.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
still happens. So
That's so cool.
I've always thought it'd be the coolest software application if you could somehow tap into people's brains and record the music they hear.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally, for sure. And what drew you to the bass instead of like a guitar or something?
I started on guitar.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely sucked, and to this day, I still absolutely suck.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I bought a guitar when I was, I guess, 19, and I got books on chords and different songs, and I started teaching myself stuff as best I could, and I was teaching myself like Bowie and Pink Floyd.
Oh wow. You're teaching that yourself?
Well, just going off of records.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
That's cool.
but I could never master the instrument. It was just I sucked. Up in Seattle, I took lessons from people who were really skilled, and just somehow it never ever came naturally, and I always felt really awkward and clumsy, and I still kind of do. I had an opportunity to join some friends of mine. They needed a bass player. I'm like, I'll play bass, because I wanted to be in a band worse than like anything.
Yeah.
And I suddenly discovered that I had a real aptitude and feel for bass right away.
That's awesome.
And in retrospect, it sort of makes a certain amount of sense, because some of my favorite music in my life has always been old 60s and 70s soul and R&B.
Yeah. That's
also
awesome.
a lot of funk, like old 60s and 70s funk. And so, I sort of came to realize that, oh, of course I like bass, because bass and rhythm is so central to those forms of music,
For sure, yeah.
And so, I just ended up like, oh, this is my instrument,
That's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. What was your first bass guitar that you got?
Oh God, it was a Kramer.
Kramer? Okay.
I think it's a Kramer. Is it the one with the weird kind of U-shaped aluminum headstock?
Cool.
It was a weird, shitty little bass, but
yeah.
It didn't take me long before I graduated to a Fender Precision.
Oh, okay, nice.
And then I ended up with G&L, and actually I still play on a G&L.
Cool.
And I had a Rickenbacker for a while, but because of the way I played and because of the weird shape of the body and the kind of the square edge, I used to completely my whole forearm would always just scrape against that edge of the Rick. Like, this is painful. So
yeah,
I wish I still had it, because it was a cool bass, but I ended up selling it.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. So, what was your first band that you were in then?
First band I was ever in was a band called Death of Marat.
Marat. That's the painting, right?
Yes, that was named after the painting. We were a bunch of totally spazzy, wannabe art school band people.
Yeah.
We were truly awful. We had interesting ideas, but none of us ultimately could really play well enough to pull them off.
Yeah.
And then so we had this weird, like, and we had different influences within the band, so it didn't ever really mesh per se. Like, our guitar player Chip was really into Devo and the Ventures, and I was probably coming from kind of a place of more heavy rock and art rock and a lot of prog rock as well.
Cool. Yeah.
Made no sense in a way. And then our keyboard player was this guy named Brad. He later actually was the bass player in a band I put out on CZ Records called Vexed.
Oh yeah.
But he played keyboards, and his big influences were like orchestral maneuvers in the dark and maybe like Kraftwerk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then our drummer Tom was just a good friend. At that point in time, he really just could barely play drums at all. and so it's just this weird amalgam, and it never really worked. And I think I was in that band maybe 6, 8 months, something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
I kind of
How-
outgrew the band.
yeah.
I wanted to do things, and I just became frustrated. I felt like the band was stagnant, and I thought that a lot of people that saw us play, and the rare number of shows we did play, like I felt like we got mocked more than we got appreciated.
Yeah.
And so it was after that I'm like, I'm out of here.
Mhm.
I want to play with people that can actually translate
Yeah, for sure.
some of the ideas that I have. And so that's when I quit in that band in '83, and ended up playing in two different bands in 1984.
Mhm.
One was this three-piece called Feedback,
Yeah.
which was sort of proggy, kind of
Mhm.
instrumental. That was the first band I played with Matt Cameron.
Yeah. How'd y'all meet?
I met Matt at the Metropolis at a show that he was playing drums in the band Bam Bam.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
And I was like, I liked the band, but
Mhm.
but I particularly liked the drummer. And so after the show, I like, dude, you're fantastic, and
That's awesome.
just exchange numbers. And later I called him. So we
Cool.
did that for 8 or 9 months, and then at pretty much the same time, I ended up joining 10-Minute Warning
Oh, yeah.
as the bass player. This was shortly after Duff left the band, and their
Mhm.
then bass player David left at the same time, and so they went from a 5-piece down to a 4-piece.
Wow.
You got that record, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
So that record is basically that was that band.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That was that year, that not quite a year actually,
Mhm.
that I was in 10-Minute Warning, and that's something.
Cool.
And that was the band pretty much broke up at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and me and Jack started playing the following January, 1985.
Cool.
And that really is what became Skin Yard.
That's awesome. And going back to Feedback, there was a record that was released, the home demos from '84. How did you guys? Was that just recorded on a 4-track or something?
It was recorded. Matt had this Tascam cassette home recorder thing.
Cool.
So early on, Tascam had this 4-track recording deck, and it would use a regular cassette tape,
Oh, yeah.
and it would use the 2 tracks on side A, and then the 2 tracks on side B is track 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
And actually, we rehearsed in my living room of this duplex I lived in, and
Yeah.
we just mic'd it as best we could. And I think there was a few places where we would ping pong tracks from 2 down to 1. In particular, like to get drums down, so we could, because our guitar player played guitar and guitar synth. Yeah, we recorded on this weird cassette,
Cool.
So years later, Jack transferred those 4 tracks
Mm-hmm.
to, an actual real tape.
Yeah, for sure.
And, he mixed it. And I don't know, like, I guess we released it. I mean, I released it sort of kind of, but, digital only.
Yeah.
But, I felt like the music was at least good enough
Oh, totally.
where it should at least be out there to be heard.
For sure. Yeah.
And it's really weird because you listen to Feedback and you listen to 10-Minute Warning.
Totally
and
different.
it's nothing remotely similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
To the band. And you'd probably never guess it was like the same bass player, me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started Skin Yard with Jack, I basically wanted to start a band that had components, aesthetic components from both bands.
Cool.
I wanted the kind of heavy psychedelia, that kind of component,
Yeah.
kind of darker, heavier piece from
10 minute. Yeah.
And then I kind of also wanted to play with more cerebral ideas and be able to fuck around with time signatures.
That's awesome.
The way that we started to doing Feedback, and
Yeah.
so that was conceptually kind of how we went into creating music for what became Skin Yard.
Oh, nice. Cool. Did you because a lot of the songs that you play on, they've got some really weird dynamic and time signatures. Were you ever taught in music theory, or you just kind of were able to just play like that?
No, it just sort of, that's kind of what tended to pop in my head.
Cool.
And also, Jack and I really creatively, we were really well suited.
That's awesome.
We just, the way we thought about things and approached things, and kind of the way we talked about music when we created stuff together, we just kind of had a real unique creative meshing.
Cool.
It was a very, I mean, the music doesn't necessarily sound organic per se, but when we work together very, very well.
That's awesome. Yeah. Did it kind of just flow out of you guys?
What's that?
Would it kind of just flow out, or would you guys have to spend time?
Well, we would, I mean, for a long time, he and I would just sit down and write stuff, just the two of us, and we'd fuck around with ideas and play off each other and come up with different ideas. But we would talk about it. We're like, oh, I like when you did this part, like Skinyard was an interesting band in that we always talked, like when we worked on songs, we would talk about them. We wouldn't just plug in and play. We'd plug in and play and kind of jam on things for a while and then stop and kind of have conversations about what we thought worked and why, and maybe, oh, I'm hearing something different. Let's try it like this.
Cool.
And I think very much to the benefit of the music. Like, we worked pretty hard at composing music.
Yeah.
And a lot of the subtle nuances we would kind of work on, and some of the weird little changes we would actually kind of, try different things. And, we were definitely not a band like, say, Nirvana was a band that it would just flow. Like I used to talk to Kurt, and he was like, whenever he picked up the phone, I'd be talking to him, and you could literally hear him like sitting in a chair with a guitar on his lap.
Really?
Just
that's cool.
Walking around, just kind of hunting and playing and pecking, and like, it was the exact opposite. Like he was just such a natural. He could just come up with things, and there they were, and there was the idea, and we're good with it.
That's so cool.
Instead, would sometimes spend weeks working on a song.
Oh wow. What do you say? What song would you say you spent the longest working on?
Oh, I have no clue. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Some things would come together quickly, some wouldn't. Sometimes the other thing is, like, you hear certain songs in our recordings that we recorded at different times, different lyrics and different feels. Like when you listen to the original Gentle Collapse, which is called Jump the Wall.
Yeah.
It's a very different, you can recognize as the same song, but it's
very different from the same
feel.
Yeah, totally.
Part of that's the drummer. Part of it is just different lyrics, and part of it's just we kind of would revisit things and kind of mess with them in different ways. Cool. So I don't know if any one particular song,
Yeah.
But there were some songs that we probably spent 3 or 4 weeks. We probably had songs that we'd spend 4 or 5 weeks with, and then in the end, we could never make it work, and we never.
Yeah.
Or there are songs maybe that we recorded but never played live.
Okay. How many songs would you say that you never recorded that you guys did play live?
That'd be a question for Jack. He has a weird memory for that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Cool.
He kind of remembers that stuff. Like,
that's awesome.
Like, oh yeah, we recorded that one, but we never played it live.
Yeah.
Or there were certain songs, that there were certain songs we could only play with certain drummers, especially stuff off the first record.
Yeah. I couldn't picture Barrett playing on the first Skinyard record.
Well, once we got Scott in the band, first it was Matt, and then we had Jason. But Jason was only with us for 6 months. But there was a lot of those songs that Jason just didn't really have the chops to pull. And Scott was the same way. But Scott brought in a whole new feel and a whole new philosophy. That's the thing. Like when Matt was our drummer, we were definitely an interesting band.
Yeah.
But there wasn't really much of a ferocity to us as a band at that point. Like I consider Skinyard with Matt as one band, and then everything we did after Matt, almost a different band.
For sure.
Still the same name, and it's still 3 of the same people. But what we were doing creatively, our feel, the spirit of the thing, the way we were writing, bore no resemblance. Totally. Like I feel like Skin Yard version 1 was this weird, cool art band, and Skin Yard version 2, which was basically, starting with Jason, but basically with Scott and Barrett.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff fits within the grunge canon. And to me, the first record never does. And I'm not talking about the first record because I like it. It's just not the same thing.
Totally. Yeah.
It's sort of like we hadn't figured out who we were. We didn't know what our voice was yet on that first record. But we were able to create stuff that, in that scene, I think a lot of people ultimately couldn't really deny as being something of a unique quality. We were doing nothing that sounded like nothing else anybody had heard, and certainly we're doing something that sounded nothing like what any other band was doing at the time.
For sure, yeah. Since it was such a unique first record, what bands were influencing you guys during that time period?
Oh God! Again, kind of going back to the things I was saying about Death of Marat. I think between Jack and Ben and even Matt, all four of us, I think we had different influences, for sure. I can tell you that, like Matt, I remember back then, and maybe still, like at that time, his favorite drummer in the whole world was Stuart Copeland.
Oh, okay, cool.
And you can hear it, you definitely can. Maybe the sort of the influences that we all shared, like me and Ben probably really shared Bowie and Bauhaus.
Oh yeah, totally.
And maybe stuff like Susie and the Cure. But probably Jack wasn't really into those bands. Jack and I probably shared a different kind of appreciation for some of the British kind of blues-based bands like Robin Trower. Jack had a particular affinity for the Groundhogs, a band that I hadn't known until Jack. He turned me on to.
Oh, cool. I don't think I've ever heard of them either.
Listen to, let's see. I'm trying to think of that record. I think usually, listen to Thank Christ for the Bomb.
Okay, Thank Christ for the Bomb.
Thank Christ for the Bomb's an astonishing record. Cool. And we probably shared a appreciation for like Killing Joke.
Totally.
Probably Zeppelin.
Yeah.
I probably had an appreciation for Gang of Four that I'm guessing Jack was probably like, what do you like about this?
Really? That's crazy.
I don't know this for sure, but I think at that time, Jack probably didn't really understand the just sort of semi-chaotic nature, and the kind of weird jaggedness of that band, especially from the guitar perspective.
Oh yeah.
I probably had an absolute love for Birthday Party, and Jack probably like Noise. So we all had our stuff.
Totally. That's awesome.
We're also all, fanatic about music in general.
That's so cool. Nice.
And there was so much going on at that time that, there was so much to be influenced by. I mean, like a lot of the independent and underground rock going on from the mid to late 80s is pretty astonishing. Yeah,
for sure. Was there any like local bands that you guys were really into? I guess Soundgarden.
Oh, sure. I mean, Skin Yard and Soundgarden were kind of sister bands. We played a bunch of times. We often got compared to each other because, within that scene, we were probably two of the
art punk bands. Yeah.
We were probably the only bands that fucked around with time signatures.
Yeah, totally.
But, it was a really, really small scene back then. So we were all attending each other's shows, we were all fans of each other, Skin Yard, Soundgarden, Room 9.
Oh, yeah.
Bundle of Hiss. Feast. Obviously.
Okay, yeah, Feast. I've heard of Feast too.
Green River was another one.
Cool.
Melvin's, Malfunction. Yeah. I mean, basically, the bands on Deep Six, and then add in Feast and Bundle of Hiss and Room 9, and then, Room 9 sort of kind of eventually morphed into
Love Battery.
And so it's such a big Seattle, the whole Seattle scene is such a kind of phenomenon now, but the reality of the time back then was it was a small, sleepy little scene, you know?
Yeah.
If you could get 100 people at your show, you were psyched.
That's awesome.
That was a well attended show. And you knew most of the people in the room. That was the thing.
Oh yeah.
And then once bands started getting signed and bands started breaking, you know, the size of the shows certainly got bigger. Increasingly, you didn't know who a lot of these people were.
Yeah, so it made it less fun then.
It didn't feel as organic.
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly you started, you know, in the 90s, you started having bands getting signed and we're like, who the fuck is Candlebox?
Exactly, yeah.
Who the fuck is Queensryche? And even to a certain degree, at first anyway, who the fuck is Alice in Chains?
Yeah.
They were a suburban rock band, you know? When they first hit the scene, they had spandex and they looked
hair. Yeah.
They were kind of a Melrose, you know, they were like an LA Sunset Strip kind of hair.
White Snake.
Yeah, kind of. But I have to say, you know, it didn't take long before they became and cool. Still to this day are one of my favorite bands from
totally.
You know, I still think their output and even their new records are fantastic. I think, you know, I basically think Lane and Chris are, you know, frankly, the two best vocalists from that entire scene.
For sure. Yeah.
I'd say so too. Gary Cantrell is an amazing guitar player. He's a good lyricist. He's a good songwriter. I mean, I have nothing but admiration for him.
That's so cool. Awesome.
Even though, you know, at the time they were like, what's this mainstream shit?
Yeah.
But, you know, they were sincere and honest with what they were doing. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's
cool.
It's just a fertile time.
That's awesome. You're mentioning Deep Six. If you could go back and put any more bands on there, what other bands do you think you'd include on that compilation?
Well, I don't know. Probably Bundle of Hiss and Feast.
Cool.
And, you know, to be honest, I don't think that You Men ultimately belonged on that comp.
Yeah.
But I love it. It's still one of my favorite tracks on there. And they were one of my favorite bands.
That's cool.
They were largely added on because locally they were probably the band that had the best recognition. Like they were largely put on because, like, shit, if we don't have some band that somebody knows, are we going to sell any records?
Yeah. Was that put out before they set the Mode on fire, or was that after?
Oh yeah, that was before.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I would, you know, I would also probably go so far as to say that probably Skinny Yard shouldn't have been on that record either.
Really? I was gonna say, I think The Birds that was the first Skin Yard song I ever heard, and that's like my favorite song still on Deep Six. Just it's got such a unique sound to it.
It's unique, but I much prefer the recording of The Birds later on the first record.
Oh, really? Are they separate versions?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, they're entirely different. You know, Jack hates it when I say this because you know I think his opinion is you should never say anything bad about the band.
Yeah.
But of all the stuff we ever recorded, there are only 2 songs we ever recorded that personally make me cringe.
Oh, really?
And that's the 2 songs on Deep Six.
No way. That's crazy.
Totally. But you know, I mean, that's listening as a fan and a spectator is different from. I just you know, I know for a fact that we are still such a green band, and we were still like, I just feel that, you know, we weren't quite yet ready to be recorded.
Yeah.
But we did, and I'm absolutely grateful for the opportunity and for the inclusion on that record, because it's pretty easy to imagine that had we not been on Deep Six, our trajectory may have been very different. And it may have been written into the history of Seattle rock in a very different way. I just, you know, that record came out, and by the time the record came out, I think that's probably what it is. By the time the record came out, we had so many better songs that we could have put on there, and we were playing so much better, and and maybe part of it too is like the saxophone.
Yeah.
Like,
You don't like it?
The sax didn't last very long in Skin Yard. It was pretty early
Yeah.
because we were still kind of grasping it, like who we were.
Hmm.
We we were still kind of exploring the edges of what we were creating, and we hadn't figured it out yet. I never felt that the sax ultimately fit in the band. And
Yeah.
I think that's eventually why we just scrapped it, because
Hmm.
it largely didn't. It only worked on the slow ponderous songs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it is what it is, and I have mixed feelings about it. I think part of it is just that I think Ben was still very insecure as a vocalist at that point. It took him a while to really just find his voice and to gain his confidence as a singer.
Yeah.
And I think really that started to really gel for him, especially, on hallowed ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it sounds like on the first record, he's kind of straddling that Peter Murphy, Bowie sound, but then on Hallowed Ground, he's kind of got his own voice now.
He's still crooning on the first record.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's not really doing that so much more by the time the second record came out.
Totally. Yeah. So the two songs on Deep Six, were those the first two songs you guys wrote?
No, I don't think. Well, shit, I don't know. I don't remember. They were a couple of the first songs we wrote.
Okay, cool.
I mean, Gelatin Babies, Single File.
I've never heard Single File. Is that an unreleased track?
Oh shit, I think it is. Never mind.
Wow.
That may come out on the 7-inch box set, if and when that ever happens.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask later on if you guys are ever gonna put some more Skin Yard reissues out. That'll be sick.
We're playing with the idea of a little 7-inch box set with 7 different singles in it.
Oh, that would be awesome.
1 or 2 tracks that have never been heard, including one that's really rad. I don't know why we didn't put on the first record. Jack says that I shit canned it, and I'm like, really? Because I love it. It's a song called California. Single File's another one. I know I scrapped that one because I hate the vocals, but then Jack did a mix down of that song as a instrumental. And I'm like, I really dig it as an instrumental.
That's it.
There's a version of Living Pool with a completely alternate, different guitar take on it.
Really?
We're probably going to release that. So it will be stuff that has never come out on that format before, but a couple tracks will be never released, and then at least one will be an alternate guitar take, and probably a couple of them will be alternate mixes. Like Jack remixed Blind Leading the Blind.
He did?
Yeah, he's never been happy with the mix on that, in particular the drums, and so he remixed it.
Cool.
But Jack's very very meticulous and very focused when it comes to doing the best job he can at any given point in time in sort of preserving this history. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
he has the chance
dedicated to his craft
to remix some of these Skin Yard things that he's never been happy with. He does, and similarly, Jack did the same thing with Ultra Mega OK, where he took what most of us consider a really unfortunate Soundgarden record and finally mixed it in the way it should have been the first time, because we all knew the power of Soundgarden because we used to go see them all the time, and we never understood when Ultra Mega OK came out why it sounded so thin and tinny. It just really made sense. And then Jack finally, and I guess he's been trying for 20 years, like, hey guys, let me remix this. And finally they said, let's do it. And now it's just an absolute monster of a record. And
cool.
That was a record that I think all of us at the time always were expecting we were going to hear.
Yeah. Because I have the reissue, so I've never heard the original recording then.
You should hear it just sometimes just to be like, oh wait, what?
Yeah.
The reissue is spectacular.
Yeah, it's a great.
But
Great.
the original was just it was really unfortunate.
Wow, that's great to hear.
And he did the remixes on the Green River stuff. I
Hmm.
think he did a good job there. And I don't know if you've heard the Human Box that
Oh,
somehow,
I've got that. Yeah, it's a great
but
record.
yeah, Jack, like he poured every ounce of sweat that he could into making that sound as absolutely good as it could. And it shines. It
That's
absolutely
awesome. Yeah. When did he get? Because so the first Skinner record was his first kind of time being an engineer. How did he get into recording, and did he go to school for that at all, or he just self-taught?
he didn't go to school. No, he initially, so the record that became Angle of Attack, which is his first solo record,
Hmm.
most of the material on that is stuff that he played all the instruments on,
Oh wow.
bass, drum, guitar, and I think there might be a couple vocals too. I should know this, but in this moment I don't remember.
Yeah.
But he spent a couple of months up in this cabin up near a place called Tiger Lake, and he had this reel-to-reel 4-track and brought amps and instruments and a drum set, and he just spent a couple of months just laying down tracks and multi-tracking, and that's kind of how he initially learned to do it, just by doing
Cool.
it, by diving in. And it was actually those original tracks. He came to a couple of feedback rehearsals because he had known Nerm, our guitar players, from high school.
Oh, cool.
And so he came to a couple of rehearsals, and I remember there's one of them where he had this tape. He's like, "Oh, here, there's a bunch of stuff I did," and it's him. This is a tape I recorded. It's just I play all the instruments, and I remember listening to it, just going, "Holy shit, who is
That's
this?
awesome.
This is great." So it was because of that tape that after the 10-minute warning and feedback broke up, I was very specifically fixated on him and wanting to start a band with him based on that tape.
That's so cool.
Just the ideas that he was working with, and it sounded like nothing else that I knew, and I like the idea of working with someone, playing with stuff that didn't sound like anything else.
Totally, that's so cool.
And I think that first Skinhead record definitely doesn't sound like anything else.
No, definitely, yeah. It's a true gem. So then how'd you guys get involved with Ben?
We were writing a song as an instrumental band for a while, and we wanted a singer.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't really having a lot of luck. And we played a couple of house parties. And there was a house party we played on kind of right on the edge of Capitol Hill, in this basement. And we had all of this material, but no vocals. And we put a mic in front of the stage, and it's like in the basement of a house with this big raging party was going on. And we just said, anybody who wants to just grab the mic and do whatever, go for it. And, various people grab the mic and just, improv different stuff. And Ben was one of those people.
That's so cool.
And we just kind of like, oh, this is he's doing some cool stuff. Like he's actually listening to what's going on, and he's trying to do something that fits with it, which probably was not an easy thing because
you guys
were not playing easy music.
Totally, yeah.
And even more so without a vocalist.
For sure.
And more complicated, and because we didn't have vocals, so we're probably filling the spaces in different ways. And yeah, that's how Ben came to be.
That's so cool.
Party, and it was pretty much him from that point forward.
Nice, cool. And you said Matt Cameron came up with the name Skinyard, right?
Yeah.
You know how he came up with that, or it's just random?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was kind of random. We had a band. It was the four of us. We probably had a set's worth of material, but we didn't have a name, and we had to come up with one. And we would sit down sometimes before practice, sometimes separate from practice, pens and papers, and throw ideas around. And I think this process went on for like literally a month or two, where we just nobody came up with anything we liked. Like,
Really?
we
Yeah.
would all throw things out. Everybody's like, no, that sucks. That sucks.
Yeah.
And then we kind of went on this thing where we were doing skin this and skin that.
Mhm.
And then just Matt just kind of goes, skin yard. And we all just kind of stopped and looked at him. It's like, yeah,
That's awesome.
that's it. We like it. And yeah, it was just,
Yeah.
it was the most probably frustrating and mind-numbing aspect of that band was like, God,
Can we have the name?
we can come up with the music. How come we can't come up with a name?
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally, it just
Well,
happened. But
that's
it
so
didn't
cool.
necessarily mean anything. We were just,
Yeah. It's very surreal. I really like it.
it's a strange one. There
Yeah.
was a period of time when people thought we were maybe like a skinhead band.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Boy, were they surprised when they saw.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So do you remember any of the other names that you guys had come up with, or you just kind of toss those?
I don't remember. Again, Jack probably does. Jack probably has like the original notes all written down in a
Oh,
book.
really? That's awesome.
Would not surprise me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, you guys played your first show
I
opening for
think
the
we
Human.
almost became Skin Effect,
Skin Effect. Wow. That's kind of cool.
which is actually an engineering term of some
Oh,
kind.
really?
It has to do, I think, with some kind of electrical conductivity and electricity or something in the skin of the water.
Oh,
You can
nice.
probably look it up, and I think we almost did it. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, it was Skin Yard.
Yeah. That's cool. That could have worked too. That's a great name. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys played your first show opening for the U-Men in June 1985. Do you remember that show at all?
I do.
That's awesome. What was it like?
It was fun.
Awesome.
It was mildly terrifying. I mean,
Yeah.
as any first show would be, and at that time, U-Men were the undisputed kings of the scene.
Hmm.
And so being able to plan a bill with the U-Men for a very hyped big deal show was pretty rad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize how important they were and how just like much of a huge band they were in the early days until I got that box, and I'm just like reading all about them. It was crazy.
Yeah, they were critical. I mean,
Yeah.
before any of the bands that everybody knows,
Mhm.
like the bands I go to are basically U-Men and Blackouts.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They were kind of more jazzy, no wave almost.
Sorta.
Yeah.
They're still one of my favorite bands. I mean, they started in 79 or 80, I think.
Cool.
And I want to say they broke up in like 83.
Oh yeah. So they're early band.
But early on, there was bands like there's U-Men, there's Blackout, the band I was really a fan of called The Horrible Truth, which they never released anything.
Mm-hmm.
But Blackouts actually released stuff, and U-Men actually released some stuff,
Yeah.
and then at one point in time, like in '84, probably the two biggest bands locally was actually 10 Minute Warning and U-Men.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Did 10 Minute Warning ever play a show with you, man?
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
While you were in the band with them?
I'm trying to remember. Hold on. I have a list.
Nice.
Okay. Let's see here. May not be as easy as I thought. No, I'm not finding it right now. Somewhere I have a list of. So let's see. You have the record. Actually, all the flyers. So
Yeah,
yes,
that insert.
we played together in Tacoma and in Seattle with 45 Grave and 10 Minute Warning in the U-Men.
That's cool. Awesome.
Yeah, and that was June of '94.
94. Oh, okay, cool. Or 84 or 94?
84. Sorry.
84.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I was wondering. I was like, whoa, cool. That's awesome. And it was kind of around this time that you bought CZ Records. How
I
were you
didn't
able to?
I didn't actually buy CZ Records.
Oh yeah.
Um, basically, basically, it was kind of just a confluence of things all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We were actively shopping our record to as many labels as we were fans of.
Yeah.
Um, and weren't getting any bites. We were getting some very polite rejection letters,
Mm-hmm.
from people who are saying, we like what you're doing. Keep, this doesn't feel right to us right now, but, we basically had this record, the record with Matt, and
Yeah.
nobody had put it out. And I was like, well, shit, I want to put it out,
Yeah.
this deserves to be heard. And, I don't know the first thing about releasing a record, but,
Mm-hmm.
it can't be that difficult.
Yeah.
And, I think I talked to Chris Hanzik, and, he, by then reciprocal recording was really starting to take off.
Mm-hmm.
And, he didn't want to put out any more records. Like, he was like, shit, man, I still have, whatever it was, probably like 600 Deep Six records sitting under my bed.
Really?
And, I haven't broken even. And
Mm-hmm.
studio is much more satisfying, and it's, you provide a service and you get paid. And,
Yeah.
and also I think by then him and his girlfriend Tina had broken up. So
Mm-hmm.
he knew that he wasn't going to continue with the label. That it was
Oh,
just,
okay.
he did it. It was like, that was fun. I lost a bunch of money. Okay. And I was like, well, I want to put this record out. And I was also like, maybe we can work something out where I can, buy Deep Six from you,
Yeah.
actual inventory and sort of the rights to the contracts, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and continue with the name and continue putting out records. And I will just, buy Deep Six records from you, like 100 at a time.
Yeah.
Sell through them and buy more. And
Mm-hmm.
I probably did that for 5 years before it literally took me that long to sell through them all, probably.
Seriously, that's crazy. Now it's like super sought after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I started putting records. At first, I just put the Skinnyard record and the single out,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I was friends with all these different bands and friends in bands, and I was like, well, shit, this is just fun. Let's do more of this. And I was working in restaurants, and I was saving my tip money. And
Mm-hmm.
at first, I was just saving up enough money to put the next thing out, and
Yeah.
it took quite a few years before I started actually breaking even. That was kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And then at a certain point, it was, I actually had records that started making money.
Cool.
It started as very much as a hobby, but the way that sort of transfer of ownership took place was very organic, and there was never an exchange of money. There was just
okay.
There's an understanding. Like he basically handed me the keys to the car.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
Peace be with you, right?
Yeah.
And where he started, he put out 2 records. I ended up putting out 90 some odd records.
Wow, that's crazy. What was the other record besides Deep Six that he had put out?
The Melvin single.
Oh, really?
Yeah, CZ02.
Cool.
I would love
That's
to take
the 6 songs EP or the
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome.
And then I later released it with extra tracks on there as a 8-song 12-inch and a 10-song CD.
Oh, nice.
And then those songs can all be found on the Melvins released through Ipecac, which is, I think, called 21 Songs.
Or yeah, 26. Yeah, it's funny, they got more and more. That's cool.
Yeah. So they just took all of those 10 and added 16 more early stuff.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. So why was the first Skinnyard record the only Skinnyard record that was on CZ, and you guys didn't put Hallowed Ground on that too?
The main reason was because there was tension within the band, not with Jack, but with the other members, with me actually being the record label as well as being in the band, and this sort of sense that I was double skimming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, shit, man, we're like, you're getting, if there's profit, you're getting the same as us, but then you're making more money on top of that. And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm also putting all the money out.
Yeah, you're doing the work.
And
Yeah,
marketing it. I'm pressing it.
for sure.
And it just became really clear that, it wasn't really a fight worth having, and that was part of it. It's just like internally, it would just be easier to sort of do that separation of church and state, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the other side too is I didn't have a lot of resources and I had very limited money. And, if we could be with another label who had better resource and better infrastructure, it would perhaps make more sense.
Yeah.
So, we shopped it around and Bill at Toxic Shock signed us or licensed the record from us basically for like a 5-year period.
Cool.
And he did not do the greatest job, I will say.
Really? Yeah.
But, he had records under his belt. He had a certain following. He was plugged into some scenes, and he also he had a store and also distributed stuff through mail order.
Okay, cool.
A lot of that was more than I had.
Yeah, my dad actually gave me an old Toxic Shock mail order from like 1985 that he got when he was a youngster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got
So
like the first Butthole Surfers EP on it. It's pretty cool.
yeah. So it was cool, but Bill's a great guy, but he's not a great businessman.
Yeah.
It's still one of my favorite things we did. Like when that record came out, the feeling of accomplishment was so much greater than it was with the first record.
Nice.
And I think to most of us, just because we felt like we had finally found our voice.
Yeah, totally. That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so I consider that and Thousand Smiling Knuckles to sort of be the most important records that we put out.
For sure. Yeah.
Not everybody agrees, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I'd say Hallowed Ground is definitely that's the record that made me just like absolutely fall in love with the band.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of it, the first part of it was because of that crazy album cover. What's the story behind that?
The story behind that is that the woman on the cover is the mother of my son, actually.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
No way.
And when she had first moved to Seattle, she had this boyfriend who was a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed me that photo. I'm like, oh, fuck, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Can I use that? Can I make that an album cover? And she's like, sure, I guess. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And then the kind of explosive thing in the background. So for some background, I was going to Seattle Central Community College in this trade program for pre-press and offset lithography. So pre-press and printing.
Oh, okay.
And so I learned like typesetting and film work and all this stuff. I had access to like darkroom and all these tools and a typesetter and even to printing presses.
Oh, cool.
And I learned how to do film stripping before they had digital composite, but back then it used to all be done by hand. So I did the whole design for that whole album cover while I was going to school there. And so I took that photo and I shot it as a halftone and I cut it out with Ruby Lith. And then the background image is this posterized image from the explosion of Mount St. Helens.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's crazy. I'd always thought it was like paint just thrown on a canvas.
It's Mount St. Helens erupting. And then that Skin Yard logo was just a logo I had created myself. Kind of did this thing by hand, and then I kept fucking with it using a copier to distort it more, and I kind of had it the way I liked it. That's the story.
That's awesome. Yeah, that picture is just so weird, just like with the turban and the gun. It's crazy. And the explosion. Yeah.
It's I think also that's part of why that record is exciting, because I just think graphically it's so bold and it's just there's such an intensity about it. I also think it just somehow really captures the music that we were doing.
Yeah, totally. I know you'd I looked at an old Skin Yard post from a while back where because my vinyl copy, it's got the blue and red ink switched, but you
Yep.
said that the band was more of like a red colored seeming band. So how did you, or why did you switch the colors for just the vinyl, just to change it up a bit, or
Just have fun.
cool?
So in that case, all we did was switch the negatives for the magenta and the cyan
Mhm.
and switch them. So that one was predominantly red and the other one was predominantly blue.
Oh, cool.
And I don't even know which one I like more. I think they're both really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, they both look sick. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And sorry to backtrack a bit, but what's the story of the first album cover? That's a really cool painting.
It's a woman named Beth Hendrickson.
Mhm.
She was just a friend of mine, a really talented artist. She's still an incredibly talented artist.
Oh, cool.
I think she's made her entire living from art, probably for at least 20 years.
Nice.
And I, we used to hang out a lot as a, small circle of friends. And,
Mhm.
she just had all these paintings and art she did. And I just remember being drawn to that painting.
Yeah.
It's like, can we do that? Could we do that for the first Skinny Art record cover? And she's like, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Cool.
It was probably nothing more than that.
Really? Wow. Do you know if it has a title or anything?
It probably does.
Cool.
She's actually one of the few people left that I still want to interview for the Skinny Art book.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
So, and that's primarily why I just want to talk to her about her recollections of how that came to be.
That's so cool. Awesome. Nice. So yeah, so Hallowed Ground, you mentioned that's when you guys kind of found your sound. What kind of got you guys to start playing a bit heavier on that record?
We had already wanted to.
Mhm.
Jack and I both share the same, like we both absolutely admired and appreciated everything Matt was able to do. Because as far as I was concerned, he was pretty much the best drummer in Seattle at that point.
Totally.
But he was very, very mannered and very sort of technically proficient.
Mhm.
And we liked that element, but, we basically just wanted to rock more.
Yeah.
And we felt like a lot of our stuff didn't really rock the way we wanted to, and it's really tempting if you have a drummer like Matt
Mhm.
in the band. Like Matt can do absolutely anything you can come up with and throw at him. He can do it.
That's amazing.
Most drummers can't do that. And so we kind of did that. We would come up with things that we knew that he could pull off. And so, people would be sufficiently blown away live. But really, we kind of wanted to be more primal
Mhm.
and heavier and just get more into just thick groove. And it's kind of funny because, when he left the band, there was no acrimony or anything like that. It was just, he was like, I think I'm done. I'm kind of, yeah, whatever. And I think we were done with him too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny that what we wanted was exactly the thing he ended up doing in the next band.
Soundgarden. Yeah.
But we had really wanted a different. We'd come to understand that what we wanted to do would contain elements of what we had been doing, but we wanted something that was just more primal, more immediately emotional.
Yeah.
And boy, did Scott give us that.
For sure. Yeah.
Scott wasn't necessarily the most technically proficient drummer,
Mhm.
but he was a freaking brutal monster. And he came very much from hardcore and punk rock.
Okay, cool.
And Matt did not.
Yeah.
And so Scott brought this energy and intensity. And he's, back then especially, he was an intense, angry dude. And that came through in his playing. And yeah, technically maybe we weren't quite as jaw-dropping, I guess, as we had before. But what we got instead was this just kind of intensity that was
Totally.
just, cold sweat. Suddenly the live show became a whole different animal. Our live show with Matt was always more mannered.
Yeah.
probably because our music was more mannered. But with Scott, suddenly everything became like, oh shit, have you seen Skinnyard lately?
Cool.
And
That's
so
cool.
it was more exciting. It was much more exciting to play with Scott.
Yeah,
Everything suddenly seemed a lot more dangerous.
that's cool.
And
Awesome.
I think that's what we were missing. We didn't have a sense of danger.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But before you guys got him, you had also had Steve Weed and Greg Gilmore play,
Sort of.
sort of.
So I tend to gloss over that, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Well, let's go a little further back. So after Matt left, our drummer was Jason Finn,
Yeah.
and we actually recorded with Jason Finn. And playing with Jason was really fun, just because he was a great guy. We got along with him so just on a personal level really well. He wasn't the greatest drummer at that time. He felt very sort of out of his depth a lot of the time, but he had a feel and a groove, and he kind of teased out the more psychedelic elements that we had in our music. And I always liked that. I like that component. He wasn't a fierce and ferocious player. He wasn't coming from a place of punk rock, but every drummer kind of brought something different, right?
Yeah.
And we actually recorded some stuff with Jason, and but he was in the band for 6 months, and then he went off to Europe with his girlfriend, and we were all saddened by that because it was a really fun time, and so we were basically drummerless, and we were like, what the fuck are we gonna do? God, this is ridiculous. And so at the time, Greg Gilmore, was available, and I played with him in 10 Minute Warning. And actually, before Matt, at the very, very beginning, we jammed with Greg a couple of times, but it just never quite gelled.
Yeah.
And then Steve was available. So I wouldn't say that either of them were ever really in the band, so to speak. We played a total of 2 shows with Steve and 2 shows with Greg, and that was it. And Greg, he was not into it. And so it never really clicked, and it never really jived. And it was very obvious all around. Like, he was kind of sitting in, but he just wasn't really, his heart was not there. Steve Lee, on the other hand, was probably a better fit musically. But the problem with Steve Lee was that he was trying too hard to fill the shoes of Matt Cameron.
Oh, interesting.
And being overly just too exacting and too precise and too technical. And we were really consciously trying to move away from that. And I probably would have stuck with Steve because I did think he was a great drummer. But I think Jack was just like, no, I don't want another Matt.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it, like listening to what he did.
Yeah.
But you can't really be a Matt kind of drummer with Tad. You have to be a Tad drummer with Tad.
Yeah.
So, Greg, it was just obvious this ain't a fit. Steve was a certain kind of fit, maybe, but Jack was just like, no, this is not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I want to rock harder and heavier. I don't want somebody, because if you were a drummer and you'd see Skinnyard with Matt, you probably are like, oh shit, I want to play like that. Because Matt was, there was nobody that played as good as he did.
Mm-hmm.
So, it makes sense. Steve's like, what a great thing to try to aspire to. So they weren't, I would just, they were never really part of our band. We tried them out for a couple shows each, and and then we had Scott for a couple of years and records,
Yeah. That's awesome. Is there a specific song on Hallowed Ground where his drumming just blew you guys away?
Probably.
Yeah.
So much of, there's also a difference between studio and live too. Like the thing is, Scott was, so much of that was like, we were so good live with Scott. even when we were sloppy, we were still just good. You know,
Cool.
it always worked.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. It's it's been so long. Needle Tree is just a really interesting. I mean, well, I'll probably just say Stranger in Hallowed Ground. I mean,
Yeah.
OP4 was a song off of Hallowed Ground that actually was really rough with Scott.
Oh, really?
Because OP4 used synchronized bass.
I was wondering, so did you have a delay pedal for that? Because I've tried playing that before and I just can't do it.
No, you have to have a synchronized either delay pedal, or I had a rack mount delay, but
Oh, okay.
same difference. You have to play with the delay.
Yeah.
So so you go diddly 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 diddly, and then, so you have to be like, that's a perfect song for Matt, because Matt can play like a metronome.
Mm-hmm.
Scott cannot. Scott speeds up and slows down, and Scott tended to rush the beat a lot. And so playing that live was always really hard, because he would, out of the gate, you can even hear it on the recording, you can hear him speeding up. And you can actually hear me trying to pull him back. So it was always this tug of war on that song. And it was the same way actually with him and Gentle Collapse, was same kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's always pushing the beat and speeding up. It's like, dude, you can't speed up when we're playing, a song with synchronized delay. It's like, it's like Out of Focus with Love Battery.
Yeah.
That works because that groove and that synchronization is precise and exact.
Totally. For sure. Yeah. So you were mentioning Needle Tree. The production for that song sounds different than the rest of the songs. I was thinking it was like a phaser effect on the drum, but I can't really tell. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'd have to listen to it.
Yeah. Because I was like, it just sounds a bit different.
We probably recorded it at a different session.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm not, I'm those are the kinds of questions that Jack can answer.
Yeah.
What effects were used on which recording? And we often went in for just recording. We didn't always just go in and do an album.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think with Hallowed Ground, we would go in and do a couple songs here and a couple songs there.
Cool.
And the problem with that sometimes is you end up with mixes that sound a little different.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. What would you say the crowning song on that album is? Because my favorite song on it is probably Open Fist. That was like the song that just really blew me away.
Well, thank you. That's one of my songs.
Oh, awesome. Nice.
It's an interesting record. I mean, Open Fist is cool and interesting, if for no other reason, because it's unlike anything else on the record.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's what I actually always kind of liked about just Skinny Art in general is we would sort of play within our own mold, and then we'd put songs in there that broke the mold, broke our own mold. Like OP4 wasn't like anything else,
Yeah. Pretty much every song on that record sounds very different. I think Stranger in Hallowed Ground kind of have different.
Then we had the slow, heavy ones like Burn and God.
Yeah.
And Throb.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I guess Black House too. Yeah, I don't know. I have a particular fondness for that record in general.
Yeah, that's awesome. So God is probably to me, it was like the strangest song, because it's kind of just like this. It's almost like Ben talking over you guys playing. What was like, because he's talking about just some weird stuff. Do you know what he was referring to at all in that song, or was he just making it up?
I think he was making up. I mean, Ben's process was very, like, we would typically, from a process standpoint, we would write the music most of the time without Ben's participation. He didn't always make it to our rehearsals.
Oh yeah.
And then he would complain that our stuff was hard to sing to, and our response was like, well, dude, then show up and be part of the process.
Yeah, exactly.
But we typically wrote music, and then lyrics would be basically written and fit on top of it. And sometimes we would tweak things around a little bit to kind of work with what Ben was working on, but more often than not, he would have to fit on top of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And he just kind of did what what made sense and what felt right to him,
Hmm.
and I don't know where some of his ideas came from, but I know, when you listen, for instance, to Jump the Wall versus Gentle Collapse, and there's a few other places where it's the same song, but they're different versions because it's a different melody and it's different lyrics.
Yeah.
So those are just examples of Ben still kind of, playing around and trying to find what felt right. And, trying, like, effectively creating a different song from the same song because it's a different vocal melody and different lyrical content.
Yeah.
Which, for a lot of people might be like, that's weird. Why do they do that? It's like, well, that's what we did.
Hmm.
It's Ben was often writing different, writing stuff in this book or this, notebook here, this paper, and just kind of always searching for something and playing with ideas.
Cool.
I don't know that I don't think the narratives came from specific things in real life. I think they just came from
It's
just
almost a poetic thing.
and sort of narratives that he was formulating in his head.
That's cool. That's awesome. So you'd mentioned that you guys would come up with songs usually from jams. Were you usually the one who would write most of the songs? Because for me, when I listen to some Skin Yard stuff, I hear your bass line first and foremost. And that's kind of like the most standout thing about your band is your bass lines, in my opinion.
Probably more than not.
Yeah.
I mean, we've always kind of said that, we write together, like a lot of those bands where it says, house in Dino or in Dino house.
Yeah.
We wrote songs very collectively. And because the parts unto themselves, because they were always so sort of unique anyway,
Mm-hmm.
even if I basically wrote a song,
Yeah.
the stuff that Jack puts in there are so Jack that
Yeah.
you can't not also give him credit. But a lot of the bases of the song often came from bass. So
Okay, cool.
the kind of core songwriting, I probably wrote like maybe 60% of the material.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But by the same token, there's nothing I wrote, or virtually nothing I wrote, that Jack didn't also have a hand in, and vice versa.
Cool.
There's various songs that Jack wrote, but I also got credit because, there's only a couple few songs that are credited entirely to him or entirely to me.
Yeah.
Very few. Scratch on the very first record, that's Jack, 100%.
Wow.
He actually had it written, basically. I mean, I tweaked some of the bass lines a little bit, but that song was basically written.
That's crazy.
And Bleed is pretty much me.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
I wrote the whole song on bass, and then I wrote some of the guitar parts, and then the piano that's there in the beginning is also me.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I talked to you a while back about that song. You said that you were going for a Pink Floyd sound with Bleed.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool.
Huge influence on me musically, Pink Floyd.
Awesome. Nice. What's your favorite Pink Floyd record?
That's very hard to pin down because they have so many different phases.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like it's sort of like King Crimson. There's not one King Crimson. There's also not one Pink Floyd.
For sure.
I mean, you've got the early, the first two records
Sid Barrett, yeah.
are astonishing in their own way. Then Dark Side of the Moon obviously is the one that brought them to absolute fame. I've always thought that Wish You Were Here was a better record.
Yeah.
Actually, I would probably say Wish You Were Here, and actually Animals is one of my
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome.
And it's one of their less popular records, but I think
the
feel and the darkness and the lyrical content just
totally.
But very different record,
totally.
Animals with Wish You Were Here, they sort of feel like distinctly different records, or like different bands in a way.
Definitely. Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. So on the CD reissue of Hallowed Ground, you guys included Wither and American Nightmare. And I know American Nightmare made it onto the Secretions compilation, and then also the Indino Earthworm record. Was that a Jack song?
I think I don't remember.
Yeah, like the
In my,
punk
in my
skinhead
mind,
songs.
in my mind, I'm thinking that I came up with
Oh, really?
the original riff, but I might be completely wrong.
Yeah. Cool.
um, Jack could probably tell you for sure.
Cool. Awesome. Speaking of
And
that
the fact that
secretion.
Jack put it out suggests that maybe in fact he came up with it first.
Oh, okay. Cool. Awesome. Speaking of that secretions comp, what was that? Because I know it came with like a few flyers against censorship. What was that? Was that like what was basically that whole compilation for?
That was kind of a weird and interesting comp. So it came out on CZ, but it wasn't really assembled by CZ.
Really?
There was this woman who I forget which band she's on right now, but her name's Patty Herlevy.
Okay.
And she basically pulled together the bands and worked with collecting all of it. And came to me about releasing it on CZ. And I think we probably tweaked a few things, and maybe I don't remember very clearly anymore, but I think we may have said no to one or two bands, and maybe we wanted to add a couple of bands or something.
Cool.
But we put it's very limited. I think it was only 1,000 copies.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I believe some of the proceeds went to. There was a big push in Seattle at the time to censor a lot of what quote unquote kids were doing.
Yeah.
There was this ordinance that the city passed called the Teenage Dance Ordinance, where they're basically trying to shut down live music.
Really? That's ridiculous.
Teenage Dance Ordinance. And it was just like such thinly veiled bullshit.
Yeah.
They're just trying to create a scenario whereby, the youth of Seattle could not have a place to go and quote unquote dance.
That sucks.
It just became sort of a way, a pretense for them to shut down live music venues, and without any real understanding, realization. That's like, dude, if you have a place for people to go and to congregate and to see live, you're actually you're giving them something to do, and you're keeping
out of trouble and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
But we had a fairly conservative city council, and and in the end it went away. But there was just a lot of effort and a lot of activism to sort of bring attention to that. And,
cool.
and
do you think that record helped get that ordinance banned?
I think it was probably one little pebble, in a bowl of many pebbles.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was sort of one of the earlier aspects of the ways that people were collectively protesting and working together to try to bring attention to this ridiculous situation.
Yeah, totally. I know another band on there was Crypt Kicker 5, and was it Jack in that band too?
Jack was the drummer in that band. He wasn't the original drummer.
Okay.
But he was by far and away the best drummer. So the interesting thing about Crypt Kicker 5, there's a connection there with Death and Rot.
Oh, really? Cool.
So the original, Chip, one of the two guitar players, was the original guitar player in Death and Rot, and the original drummer from Crypt Kicker 5 was also the drummer from Death and Rot.
Oh, cool.
Tom Davis, an old friend of mine that I've known since I was 14 and he was 13.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
He was the one who I said in Death and Rot, like, couldn't even barely play drums at that point.
Yeah, that's crazy. Very cool.
Again, small scene.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So then after that compilation, you guys put out the Fist Size Chunks album, and I was wondering if you put that out before the Helios Creed record or after.
We we recorded it before.
Okay.
I don't remember which one came. I think the Helios record actually, man, I don't remember. I think the Helios record was released before, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So, initially, basically after we got back from what we call a tour from hell,
Yeah.
we had most of Fist Size Chunks pretty much written and had been playing a lot of it on the road. And we scheduled time in the studio after getting back from tour, which was something we regularly did. Because, when you're on the road, you come back from tour, you're probably playing.
No ideas.
But we also knew that we were really frustrated with Scott and we knew we were going to fire him.
Mm-hmm.
But we also knew that we needed to get the stuff recorded before firing him.
Yeah.
And frankly, after we fired him, Jack and I felt fairly certain that Skinnyard was probably over.
Right.
And we were not a band at all for a solid year.
That's crazy.
So it was during that year that I recorded with Helios and we released the record.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during that year that Grunt Truck's first record came out.
Yeah.
And it was during that year that Indino's Earthworm came out.
Cool. That's awesome.
And then, then Fist Size Chunks came out. And at that moment, initially, we weren't necessarily a band, but then we got Barrett.
Yeah.
Started writing, and suddenly it was like we had this enormously new spark, and we were writing some of the best stuff ever written. And the energy that Barrett brought in the band was just absolute renewal for us.
Totally.
And so for us, for me and Jack and for Barrett, but Barrett hadn't been in Skinnyard before, but it was super exciting.
Cool.
There was an energy and an enthusiasm, and it was fun again.
Cool. That's awesome.
So,
nice.
And we were just suddenly we were a really, really tight band. So we played some of the stuff from Fist Size Chunks at that point.
Yeah.
But we were so into the new stuff we were writing that all of that stuff kind of went by the wayside pretty quickly.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, I just wanted to say we've been talking for an hour and a half. Are you good to keep going for a little bit longer?
Let's wrap it up soon.
Okay.
That's a long podcast to listen to.
Yeah, true.
Hopefully you'll maybe edit down stuff that just
I'll edit some stuff. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Well, would you rather talk about the tour from hell or kind of like the recording sessions of 1,000 Smiling Knuckles to the end of your leaving Skinnyard?
Let's talk about the latter.
Okay, cool.
Although I will tell you that there's not a whole lot that I specifically remember about those recording sessions per se, but we can talk about them. There's some things I'm sure I can talk about.
Cool. Well, yeah. Why don't we start with what's your favorite track from 1,000 Smiling Knuckles?
I hate these kinds of questions.
Sorry. You don't have to do that if you don't want. How did the name come up?
Favorite song? See, I never know that I have like a favorite song per se. I'll tell you one of my favorite songs to play live from 1,000 Smiling Knuckles, for me, specifically for me, was Living Pool.
Oh, okay.
And Jack never felt that way.
Really?
For Jack, he felt like it was kind of a throwaway song. And I'm like, I freaking love this song.
Yeah.
I love playing it. I just love the feel. I love the drive of it. It's one of my favorite songs on the record. But I also really love River Throat.
Yeah, that's a great song.
I don't know. Burn a Hole, which is the last song on the record, interestingly enough, and I'm not sure why, but it must be on a playlist somewhere on Spotify. It is hands down, by far and away, the most played Skinnyard record on all of Spotify.
Really?
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Which still is a head scratcher for me.
Yeah.
I actually
the full album or just Burn a Hole is
that song is the most Skinnyard song on Spotify.
Oh, really? Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. I actually, as a song in kind of, we always had this kind of slower, heavier, ponderous songs, and I personally like Words on Bone more as a song.
Yeah.
But it's cool, whatever.
Cool.
And of course, 1000 Smiling Knuckles is probably the best lead off. It's
Yeah.
it's pretty anthemic. I don't what's your favorite song from the record?
My favorite song from that record, I gotta say, I really love Material Freak. And then I would say Words on Bone.
Okay. Well, thank you both times. Those are both my songs.
Oh, awesome. No way. Yeah. Yeah, I really love Jack's guitar riff on Material Freak. I can't even figure out what he's doing. And then yeah, the groove of Words on the Bone. It's just
Yeah.
amazing.
Material Freak's a weird song. Like,
Yeah.
just that's one of the songs that's like, what is that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's there. And
Yeah.
it really, I don't even know where it came from. It just
Really.
was one of these things. It's like, oh, that's cool. Does it sound like Skinner? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. That's
Um,
cool.
so yeah, I mean, I think overall, 1000 Smile Knuckles is probably our best record overall.
Cool. Awesome.
I think it's the most solid record. I think it's the most well played.
Yeah.
I think we have the best songwriting. I also think that the graphics and the design of that record, and I think it's Jack's best engineering
Totally.
of all records. So
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say about in the studio, I think I mentioned that I don't really have a whole lot of specific memories, but something Skinner always did in the studio, and even more so with Knuckles, was we would play all the songs live, but the takes we would keep were the ones that had rhythm tracks that were keepers.
Cool.
So what we always want to do is make sure that the bass and drum tracks were, as live tracks, the ones that we would work with. And then, more often than not, Jack would end up overdubbing his guitar, and Ben would end up overdubbing vocals later.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the energy.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Stuff, and in particular, that record is that what you are effectively hearing is the live rhythm section.
Nice.
It'll take. We might punch in some notes or some snare hits every here and there, but generally those are live cuts.
That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, the cover art is so my favorite. How did you guys get involved with Jim Blanchard?
Originally, because I knew Jim from when he used to have this fanzine down in Oklahoma, where he's from originally. This fanzine called Blatch.
Blatch.
Doug Blatch. He did all the artwork for Blatch.
That's so cool.
And I used to advertise with him.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Really easy stuff. And I worked with him pretty early on because he did artwork for the first Coffin Break EP.
Oh, okay, cool.
And the first Coffin Break single.
Nice.
That's kind of where it all started.
Cool.
And then he moved to Seattle. Or I guess he probably moved to Seattle first, and then we worked together with Coffin Break stuff. And,
nice.
But then, Jack really liked his stuff, and, worked with him on other, I think most, but not all, of Jack's solo records have been
designed by him.
Like I think Blanchard has ended up doing more work for Jack directly than for Skinnyard specifically.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Did, I mean, I saw that image and I'm like, dude, that needs to be on our album cover. Please.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I actually just got like the full poster of it from his website the other day with like the cool kaleidoscoping background. Yeah.
Right. And that original poster was before it was a Skinnyard cover.
Oh, really? No way. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then of course we did the Bulldog 10-inch, which is him as well.
Yeah, that's an amazing. Yeah, that's crazy. Did he hand draw that, you think, or super detailed?
Did he actually talks about it in the interview I did with him.
Oh, okay, cool.
For the Skinner book, but I believe the skull was basically from like a like anatomy book or something like that, and all the psychedelic insanity.
Yeah,
basically what he laid over it.
That's awesome.
Nice. But yeah, I mean, not only is it my favorite Skinnyard album cover, I think personally it's as good as any album cover that anybody has ever done anywhere.
Totally. Yeah. It's a standout album cover for sure.
It's just like, wow.
Yeah. So then why did you ultimately leave? Was it because of your you had a child?
Yes, but no.
Yeah.
Um, but to a certain degree, yes.
Yeah.
When my son was born, I basically, my son was born in March of '89.
Mhm.
And 2 weeks later, I went on the road. He was 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
Came back from tour and he was 2 months old.
Hmm.
And over the next 2 years, basically, or almost 2 years, we toured a fair bit.
Yeah.
But it became increasingly evident to me that to be in a band full time that was serious and touring was did not did not really mesh with being a full time father.
Yeah.
And I kind of had my own issues with my own parents effectively abandoning me.
Hmm.
More not physically, but through drug addiction and alcoholism.
Yeah.
That I sort of didn't want to repeat those same patterns.
Yeah.
And I never really liked touring that much anyway. I
Hmm.
always felt it was kind of a necessary thing that you did.
Yeah.
You had to. But other than those times when I was literally on stage playing, touring is a drag. You're spending 8 to 9 hours in a fucking band with these people getting sick of
Yeah.
each other,
Totally.
with all your shit just strewn about and just, for 6 weeks. Like it's claustrophobic, it's smelly, you
Hmm.
have no escape from each other. And by that time, starting initially with Scott and the tour from Hell, after the release of Hallowed Ground and
Hmm.
before we recorded Fist Size Chunks, things had gotten really tense and uneasy, which in part led to us firing Scott from the band. Ben and I always had a lot of conflict because we had different ideas of where we wanted to take the band.
Yeah.
And I was also kind of one of the people, I was probably the person who worked the hardest in the
Okay.
band. Like I
Cool.
effectively managed the band, most of the band's history. I designed most of our posters. I put up most of our posters.
Cool.
I did pretty much all of our album design or
Nice.
or art directed, working with a designer to oversee all of it.
Yeah.
Um, I basically designed the first record. I basically designed Hallowed Ground. I worked with my friend Rhonda in designing the third one, but I was, the art director,
Yeah.
dictated what was going where. And, it was basically the same relationship with Knuckles as well.
Cool.
And as an aside, by the way, Rhonda, she's the other guitar player in Crypt Kicker 5.
Oh, no way, really? That's
Tiny little
cool.
world.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure.
So I basically did all the stuff, and I was basically the person who first approached Jack with an idea of a band.
Okay, cool.
On some level, I had this feeling of ownership, I suppose.
Yeah.
And our stuff was more complicated and less accessible as a result.
Yeah.
Ben and I tended to lock horns a lot because he wanted to do simpler.
Hmm.
And he wanted stuff that sort of was going to have a more easily. At one point, he actually said that he wanted to write stuff that was more accessible for the kids, which is
Yeah,
music marketing stuff,
totally.
I remember going just getting really pissed off at him. Like, dude, I'm not doing this to cater to a marketplace.
Hmm.
This is what I want to do.
Totally.
And I don't want to quote unquote dumb it down so we can sell more records.
Yeah.
And I feel in a way that's like what he ended up doing with Grunt Truck was exactly where he wanted to take skating art.
Oh,
And
okay.
to me, that was a little more in that way.
Hmm.
He wanted us to kind of go more tad. So
Yeah.
and I was just like, fuck that. So he and I had a lot of conflict. I increasingly had more difficulty being on the road and being away from my son.
Yeah.
Um, And so when we got back from the last tour that we did together in, I guess, was that 1990 or 91? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I can actually look that up. I basically gave my my notice, but I didn't exactly give it. So the final, let's see, what was the tour? We did a West Coast tour in January of 91, and we did a national tour in October and November of 1990.
Oh, okay, cool.
So when I got back from the West Coast tour in January of 91, I basically said that that I was quitting the band after the European tour. So there was going to be a European tour coming up in support of Thousand Smiling Knuckles.
Yeah.
So that was going to be in the fall. So I gave, a fair bit of notice. Like, I'm giving 8 or 9 months notice. Like, this is my last year. And the band really honestly was kind of a little shaky anyway. Even though creatively Knuckles was such an incredibly satisfying record. And then they informed me a few days after that that our next show was going to be my last show.
No way, really?
And that they were going to go to Europe with, quote, their new bass player and their new sound.
Jeez.
And I was really, really, really angry. And I was bitter for quite a few years after that.
I'd bet, yeah.
Because my ultimate dream at that point had always been to make it to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And now they were going to go to Europe without me.
Jeez, that sucks.
Which they did. But the thing is, like, they literally broke up on the plane
Really?
on the way back from the European tour.
Jeez.
And it wasn't even, actually, Jack stayed behind in Europe because he had some recording gigs to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Barrett and Ben and Pat, their fill-in bass player, who was basically with them for about 6 months.
Wow.
And it was just, like, I basically just kind of called it quits at a time when I think the writing was pretty much on the wall anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like bands kind of have lifespans.
Totally.
If anything, it's too bad we started as early as we did because we kind of missed the bulk of the wave.
Yeah.
We did, at the time that I left, we actually did have a development deal through Warner Brothers on the table.
Oh, really?
And when they said, well, after the European tour, and I said, you sure about this? Like, don't you want to maybe wait and get our big advance from Warner Brothers and do a record for them? And then I can leave after we've had the advance and record the record. Like we could have down payments for houses. Like,
yeah.
And they're like, no, fuck it. And that deal was basically through me. And so when I left, the deal went away too.
Oh, wow.
But so it goes,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm guessing you're not a huge, sorry, go ahead.
I just said that was decades ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm guessing you're not a huge fan of Inside the Eye then?
Actually, I've really come around.
Okay, cool.
It took me a long, long time before I could just listen to that record with objectivity and with an open ear. And there's some fucking great stuff in there.
Totally, yeah.
It's not my favorite Skinnyard record. I do think it's the record. I still feel it's the record where Skinnyard's sort of trying to become grunge rock.
Yeah, totally.
And I've actually argued with Jack about this because Jack's like, dude, I wrote some of the best stuff I've ever written for that record.
Yeah.
Like, he's very proud of the records, the songs that he wrote for that record. And yeah, I will admit there's some good stuff on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, it feels like a different version of Skinner. That's all.
Yeah.
It took me a long time. And I finally was able to just listen to it for what it is and kind of go, there's some really good shit on there. There's some really ferocious stuff on there, and it's tight as fuck.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So what have you been doing since?
Well, I've been working on the Skinnyard book on and off for the last 4 years.
Awesome. Oh, wow.
Cool. Oral history book. I've done over 60 interviews.
That's awesome.
I put out the 10-minute warning record.
Totally, yeah.
I've started playing some music with a friend of mine here in San Diego, where I now live,
Oh, that's awesome. Nice.
just fairly recently. Got
Nice.
into Blackmore, who in the 90s used to play in a band called Molly McGuire.
Okay.
He's a good friend, and we started writing some stuff together. And,
Cool. You guys are thinking you need to do a band?
Probably.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't know how much we'll play or if it'll just be a record. I'm not sure.
Cool.
But,
awesome.
You know,
So,
I'm a fan of his old band. He's a fan of my old band. So
nice.
we'll come up with some cool stuff for sure.
Cool. So you think there's any more foreseeable CZ releases soon?
I don't know about soon. If there's any other CZ releases, it will be the Skinyard 7-inch box.
Cool. That's awesome.
Called Skinyard Select.
Skinyard Select. That's cool. Awesome.
1,000 copies, and that'll be it.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely get some.
Okay.
Cool. All right. And I saw you were talking the other day. You just got your house repainted. Looks sick.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah, I like it. It's very 50s-ish.
Kind of. It kind of is, and it kind of isn't.
Yeah. It's like a twist on it. That's cool.
An art house.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. So awesome. Well, I guess if that about wraps it up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. I really appreciate you talking with me and giving me all this information about one of my all-time favorite bands.
Well, it's a pleasure. Edit out all the boring stuff.
I will. Yes. Wait, what?
It's too long. It's too long of an interview to try to release the whole thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, my interview with Michael Gerald ended up being almost 2.5 hours, and I can't even watch the full thing yet.
Yeah.
So
do some judicious editing.
I will. Yes. One last question. I was asking. So I'm 19. What is it like? Do you enjoy this kind of like new wave of younger fans? Is that kind of cool for you to see? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I often tell people, like, dude, we've got these fans between Facebook and in particular on Instagram that like know every last thing about us as a band, and they're like between the ages of like 17 and 25.
That's awesome.
I'm fascinated by it. I think it's great. I think it's so cool that there are still so many young people who are like rabid and insane about music, because I can't imagine my life had not been exactly that way. That's the most exciting constant thing in my entire life.
That's awesome.
And it's still a big thing that kind of feeds my soul. Cool.
Good to hear. You're speaking of Instagram, you should put those Skinyard songs on Instagram so we can put them on our stories.
Well, we may. We'll see.
I think the only one on there is like a live version of 1,000 Smiling Knuckles that mislabeled as the Love Slug song.
Yeah, that's that's because it was released and it's even backwards. It's even backwards on Spotify.
Oh, really? No way.
Yeah, it was a split single, and he put the wrong label on the wrong side.
Wow, that's crazy. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for talking with me for so long.
Yeah.
It was good to learn all this stuff. So.
All right. Well, I'll send you a movie list soon.
All right. Yes, that sounds good.
All right, man. All right. I'm going to completely destroy your mind.
Cool. I can't wait. This will be the summer of movie watching.
Perfect.
Cool. All right.
All right, man.
Well, thanks again. Good talking with you, Daniel.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
All right. See you later.